So the Ariel Rider Grizzly, a very, very popular, very, very powerful e-bike, but is it the right e-bike for you? Well, today we're gonna find out. We're gonna go through all the pros and cons, some things that I love and some things that I hate about the Ariel Rider Grizzly. Let's get started. Damn. All right, so let's go over some of the specs. This is a dual motor design, making it an all-wheel drive bike. So it has a 1,000 watt motor in the back and then a 1,000 watt motor in the front. It's pretty awesome in all-wheel drive mode, but you can also select this to be only in rear-wheel drive or only in front-wheel drive, making it pretty versatile for any riding conditions. Another unique feature about this bike that you don't see on many other bikes is its dual batteries. It's got one battery up front and one battery in the back. Combined, you're at 35 amp hours on this, making the range on this bike very, very long. While pedaling, you can probably expect around 70 miles, if not a little more on this bike, depending on your riding conditions. I will note that in rear-wheel drive mode or in front-wheel drive mode, you definitely get a longer battery life than if you were in all-wheel drive mode. Some other things about this bike are the dual suspensions. It has fully adjustable front and fully adjustable rear suspension. The rear suspension also has air involved, so you can actually pump those shocks up and make them to your liking. You're also going to find a 7-speed Shimano on this bike, making gear shifting very easy. It is also a fat tire bike. The tires are pretty aggressive, but not overly aggressive for street riding. Braking on this bike is going to be handled by dual hydraulic brakes, so that's going to give you plenty of braking even if you're traveling at the insane speeds that this bike is capable of. For some safety features, you have an automatic front headlight, and also built into the rear battery, there is a brake light, which is actually kind of a great feature, especially if you're going to be riding at night. So let's get into some of the things that I really, really love about this bike, and then we'll get into some things that I really, really don't like about this bike. Obviously, you guys can probably tell I'm a bit of a larger rider, so some of the things that I'm going to mention here may not apply to you, but you be the judge. So some of the stuff that I love about this bike is the selectable motors. I love that I have the ability to select it between front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, or all-wheel drive. I will say in all-wheel drive, this thing can get you into some trouble. It's very, very torquey and very fast, and that front wheel definitely wants to spin pretty much anytime you're in all-wheel drive mode. Being that it is all-wheel drive, and it is dual 1,000 watt motors, this thing is incredibly fast. The acceleration on this for a bike is incredible. This isn't like a motorcycle, but for bikes, you're not gonna find a faster accelerating bike in this price range. The speed on this bike is also something that I really like. If you're traveling in traffic in certain other areas, it's nice to have a bike that you know will definitely get you over that 30-mile-an-hour mark. So this is gonna be dual motor. You can feel it's a lot snappier. 23, 24, 25, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. Going uphill, 35, 34. Slight downhill, 34, 35, 36. Just gets to that 30-mile-an-hour mark so much faster in dual motor, it's crazy. And we've actually had this bike upwards of 37 miles an hour with me on it. So that's actually pretty awesome. So some of the other stuff that I actually really, really like about this bike, especially from a bigger guy standpoint, is the build quality on this. The build quality on this and the frame size and everything, this bike just feels sturdy. It feels well built. Out of all the times I've ridden it, I've never felt like this bike was weak or that I was going to have a failure in the physical bike. And we've pretty much beat the crap out of this thing. I mean, we've pretty much done everything what we can do to try to mimic real world scenarios with this bike, and it has held up remarkably well. So there are a few things that we don't like about this bike, and we're gonna get into that right now. So I'm 6'3", and for someone that's 6'3", I would like to have some way to adjust this seat. Unfortunately, the design of this bike does not allow for that. Now, there are ways to adjust it, and I'm actually gonna do that in a future video. So another key item on the cons list, and probably the thing that I hate the most about this Grizzly, is this seat. It's pretty hard and uncomfortable, to be honest with you. It's just not a comfy seat that you want to take long rides on. And because this bike has such a huge range on it, you're going to be on the seat quite a long time if you're riding for miles. So we actually are going to be upgrading these seats very soon. So we're just waiting on them to come in. So that's going to be a huge upgrade for us. We're hoping the seats that we get are going to be much more comfortable. So I'll definitely do an update video on that and let you guys know how to install that and if we like the seats or not. But I am pretty excited about getting that seat off. Just they could have done a much better job on the seat and put a lot more cushioning in there. It's just not comfortable at all. And that's not just for me. My wife thinks the exact same way. She actually initially thought the seat was okay, but then after riding the bike for some time, she just thinks it's very uncomfortable. So hopefully that's something that we're gonna rectify soon. And if that's the worst thing on the whole bike, means that Ariel Rider did a pretty fantastic job on this thing. Now, being that I'm 6'3", riding this bike is actually still pretty comfortable, and I didn't think it was going to be whatsoever. I thought pedaling it was going to be pretty undoable. I do wish it was about an inch or two higher. I think that would definitely make it a lot more comfortable, but it's definitely doable for somebody that's even 6'3". So my wife is actually 5 foot, and she wasn't sure that this bike was gonna be comfortable for her because she's so short. So we have a very tall and a very short person on this bike, and actually we both really love them, and we don't have too many issues as far as riding them. So one major issue that these bikes have had, and we've seen from a lot of other people posting, something that we didn't actually have to physically deal with because we went and picked these bikes up from another person, is shipping time. So getting these bikes shipped out to people is taking months. Matter of fact, if you're waiting on one of these for Christmas and you're hoping to have it by Christmas, you probably ordered that thing like in January. So it's taking that long to get some of these bikes. COVID has definitely not helped that shipping problem. Another thing with the shipping is a lot of people have been reporting that the bikes are coming in damaged. Now, Ariel Rider is trying to deal with all those problems. Some of the stuff that's breaking is just from obvious damage, and some of the stuff is just from being cheap parts. One of which happens to be these little holders that hold the cables on the front forks. Those are super cheap, and on every bike that I've seen, and both of the Grizzlies that we actually have, they're broken. So I think that's just a flawed piece that they put on these. So a lot of people have been fixing them with zip ties, but it is something to note that some of the pieces and parts are coming in a little damaged. We've also seen some problems back here in this back area with some paint issues. So our bikes actually don't look too bad. They have a little bit of paint issue on the back like everybody else has, but that is something to note, that shipping time is insanely crazy. You could have some damage on this bike when it shows up to you at your doorstep. Now, assembly, I've actually had to watch some videos for assemblies because when we picked these bikes up, they were fully assembled. Now, from the looks of the other videos, assembly on this is actually relatively easy, probably take you about an hour or so. If you're somewhat mechanically inclined, assembly is pretty simple on these bikes. I don't have any real hands-on experience with that because, like I said, when we bought these, they were already assembled. So this is something that we also haven't had any issues with. We are in Florida. The weather is usually pretty nice, but some people in colder weather have reported some motor issues followed by some codes happening on their display. Now that has been rectified or is being rectified by Ariel Rider. They're actually sending out a programmer to reprogram the controllers to try to fix that issue. But it is worth noting that some of the bikes that are being shipped are going to have that issue, and you may have to contact Ariel Rider for them to fix it, but they are handling it, and their customer service seems to be okay. Another con on this bike, and it's actually a pro and a con. So a pro is that it has fully adjustable suspension. But in that fully adjustable suspension, especially for a larger guy like myself, for my wife, this is not so much of an issue, but for me, the suspension is soft. So I've adjusted the suspension. I've actually put more tension in the rear springs, and even with pumping the rear shocks up to around 160 PSI, this bike just feels spongy. So I am going to be doing a suspension upgrade on this. A lot of people changed the rear suspension. Some people have even changed the front suspension. For me, it's mostly in the rear suspension. The front feels okay, but the back is super spongy. So I'm definitely going to be changing that rear suspension at some point. I'll definitely do an update video when I do that. But for bigger, larger riders like myself, the rear suspension is pretty spongy. Now it does have a lot of travel, but you will feel yourself bottoming that rear suspension out because it is so soft. So I'm not sure if we answered all of your questions or not about the Ariel Rider Grizzly. If there's something that you think that we left out or something that you want to know, please let me know down in the comments. I'll be happy to answer any questions that we possibly can. Like I said, we do have 2 of these bikes. We did purchase them with our own money. Nobody paid for this whatsoever. We just thought it would be awesome to do a review because we love this bike so much. And I know that any one of you guys that buys one of these is probably gonna love it too. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel because we're gonna be doing a lot of fun videos with these, taking them on trails, doing some upgrades, and just overall fun with the Ariel Rider Grizzly. So make sure that you guys are subscribed to the channel. So if you guys are in the market for one of these, you definitely won't be disappointed. This bike definitely checks all of the boxes, especially for us. So from us, this is it on the Ariel Rider Grizzly, and we will see you guys on the next one.
Fresh on the scene, back got 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 fresh on the scene. Franchise best on the team, 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 back got fresh on the scene, back got fresh on the scene, back got fresh on the scene.